The Division is an upcoming third-person shooter RPG that I did not give a toss about until I, on a whim, decided to check out its open beta weekend. It is set in a New York that has been ravaged by a biological weapon. With a citywide quarantine in place, the downfall of society is well underway when our player character, a Division agent, lands in one of the few secure camps in the city. While there are friendly strongholds, most of the city has fallen to rioters, thugs, and the particularly fun Cleaners, a group who seemingly aim to stop this infection by killing everyone. Yes, everyone. Unlike the universe of, say, The Walking Dead, this takes place during the downfall of society and not the post-apocalypse. This setting serves as the backdrop for a cover-based third-person shooter with heavy loot-focused ARPG elements. The initial narrative missions were honestly threadbare, and none of the characters introduced thus far have shown much hope of being that interesting. It was all very run-of-the-mill, though I suspect Ubisoft don't particularly mind. This is an ARPG that is all about loot, progression, and the Dark Zone. The Dark Zone is by far the most interesting element of the Division, but we do need to cover the basics first. And let's start off with the city. The world map contains a whole bunch of different nodes pointing you to various activities that spawn across the world. Selecting an activity will give you an augmented reality pointer which leads you to its location. One of the nice strengths of this game is that enemies and events spawn quite dynamically, meaning that you can run across action as you make your way to an objective. This does make the world feel a bit less static and is a welcome addition. These events include clearing out groups of enemies, defending an area against enemies, protecting friendly NPCs, and rescuing hostages. Completing them gives you credits and experience. Experience levels up your character, and I'll talk about credits in a bit. There are also story missions. As an example, I had to rescue a doctor NPC from enemies in Madison Square Garden. The combination of running around to missions and clearing out the random events can actually feel decently compelling given this game's overt RPG progression mechanics. The launchpad into this content is your main base. It is a building that is instanced to you, and it does appear to be one of the only places that is 100% single player. It starts off threadbare and it can be upgraded in three main areas: medical, tech, and security. These upgrades are earned via doing missions, and each one will give you appropriate benefits. In addition to making your base more functional, they also play a role in your character's progression by unlocking new perks. You actually have two perk slots, the Q button and the E button. There are three different types of perks: security, tech, and medical. Building up the corresponding parts of your base will unlock more perks for your character, and you can pick any two. Examples include a riot shield that you can deploy, a turret that you can deploy, and a sticky grenade, though there are quite a few others. The other form of progression is your gear. Gear has a direct stat value, as well as a text effect, for an example, increased experience from mobs or increased crit damage. You can unlock various types of guns, and you can equip two large guns as well as a sidearm. The progression feels okay, but the Division doesn't have outlandish weapons like the Borderlands series, so they struggle to deliver interesting weapons. Gear is also purchased at your base from vendors using credits, in addition to also appearing as drops from mobs. Before we go any further, let's talk about the core combat loop. It is a standard third-person shooter. You dash out from cover, and you try to shoot enemies, and then you also try to outposition them via better placed cover. That's pretty much the crux of it. Weapons are decently standard, and they can be augmented via attachments. The gunplay is okay, nothing is wrong per se, and it's not actively bad, it just isn't particularly innovative or exciting. One nice thing is that some weapons do have decently punishing recoil, which does encourage players to pick their shots and fire in bursts. If you're caught outside of cover, you will take quite a lot of damage, and the enemy variety, while not amazing, is okay, and that can force you to change up what you're doing. As an example, there are melee enemies who can rush you, flamethrower enemies who can, well, flame you out, and there's also the regular affair like snipers and guys with rifles and pistols. One problem that is inherent to these RPG shooters is enemy health pools. Emptying an entire clip into an enemy is a normal occurrence, especially in the Dark Zone. Meat sack enemies just aren't that much fun, though so far the game has not went too far in that regard. What I've covered so far in the video is actually most of what the beta contains, save the Dark Zones. Dark Zones are by far the most interesting part of this game. They are a no man's land where anything goes. This increased risk brings some strong reward in the form of Dark Zone experience and Dark Zone credits, as well as better loot drops from enemies. Enemies, however, are quite a bit stronger. Much like the regular zones, Dark Zones contain events for players to seek out. The major difference is that these are open world PvP areas. There's no PvP flagging or anything like that. If you see someone, you can shoot them. The difficulty of the mobs encourages cooperative play, yet greedy players can betray their fellow agents to steal their loot. On top of that, they use proximity-based voice chat, which is a wonderful inclusion for spontaneous teamwork. One of the big mechanics of the Dark Zones is that loot works differently. Each player has a Dark Zone stash on their character, with the lore justification being that the items from the Dark Zone need to be decontaminated back at your base. This stash is quite small, only 6 items by default. Of course, running back to your base all the time sounds very tedious, so instead, the way this works is via the extraction system. Players call down a chopper, which takes 1 minute and 30 seconds to arrive. They are called down in set locations, and when they arrive, a rope comes down, and you can attach your Dark Zone loot to that rope, meaning that once that's done, your loot is dealt with and you can go back into the Dark Zone to acquire more stuff. Now, I regularly ran into situations where I and a few other players would call down a chopper to extract our gear. During that countdown, other players would try to kill us and take our loot. NPCs would try to rush us. After all, calling down a chopper is signaling to everyone in the zone that you have loot that is worth saving. So what follows is tense gameplay where loose alliances with fellow players really do matter. And I get the impression that because of things like this, you will be able to naturally make friends in this game far more so than in many others. Let's get back to the PvP elements. So when a player kills another player, they are marked as rogue for a period of time. This puts a bounty of Dark Zone credits on their head, giving, air quotes, sort of law-abiding players a reason to kill them. However, if they survive, the credits will be theirs. Additionally, the more players that you kill, the greater reward you will get, and also the greater the bounty that will be on your head. I dabbled in PvP a few times during my Dark Zone runs, and frankly, betraying people at the last moment is stupendously fun, and the tension created by trying to survive as a rogue agent for enough time to get your reward is really quite exciting. These Dark Zone credits can be used to purchase high-level loot that is quite strong in comparison to the game's regular loot. And that pretty much is what I've seen of the Dark Zones. There's a lot more, in all likelihood, but what I've seen at the minute is extremely compelling. Graphically, it's a very nice looking game, though it's plagued by performance issues and crashes. While it is in beta, I would not be surprised if they made it into launch. Overall, The Division has displayed some excellent emergent gameplay and makes great use of social dynamics to deliver tension and generate memorable moments. Outside of that, it has solid yet forgettable mechanics. What little they have displayed of the story mode seems to be quite dull as well. Perhaps the best thing I can say about it is that the Dark Zone gameplay is an engrossing and tension-filled time vampire, where the hours really do just disappear. So I'm left feeling rather optimistic about The Division from the perspective of it being a multiplayer action RPG. However, I would recommend caution. The beta test of Destiny left players quite excited, yet the overall slate of content left a lot to be desired upon launch. So from what I can gather so far, this game has a lot of potential, but it still needs to show quite a bit. I do not recommend pre-ordering it, and I do not recommend picking it up on day one. I think that you should wait, see what the reviews are like, and see what the body of content is like. Additionally, you'll want to consider how you plan to play this game. If you want to play it as a single-player RPG, then it might not be the best thing ever, but if you want to play this with a team of your friends, well, it might just be perfectly suited for that. Only time will tell, but that's it for me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.